he's always said people always do all the dumb deals. I don't know why people do the smart deals. And it's like what you put up the other day is people are spending money on the amenities, on a new pool, on the gym. They're not fixing the roof. They're not looking at the AC condensers. They're not looking at the guts of what actually, if everything comes crashing down, what makes the asset.
This is the real estate investing experience. We get it. Real estate can be rough sometimes, and that's why we bring in the experts to talk about the experiences you won't hear anywhere else with your hosts, John Cohen and Chris Grinzik.
What's going on, guys? Welcome back to another episode of the Real Estate Investing Experience. I'm your host, Chris Grinzik. With me, as always, is John Cohen. How we doing?
We're good. We reluctantly gave in to a retrade literally about 6 minutes ago on a deal. I'm pissed, but we're getting a deal done. We're selling a deal through these times, and net we blew away our expectations. So I'm not disappointed about that. I'm just disappointed that I had to give in, but it's the right decision. And when you have investors involved, you put your ego behind you sometimes.
Yep. And definitely cash is king right now. It's definitely taking a preference over top dollar for sure. You know, I think there's always a line where you extend it out and you kind of wait to ride out this, pandemic or, downturn or whatever you want to call it. But yeah, it's a little bit of a, slight, I don't want to say kick in the teeth, but maybe a tap to the teeth because we're still doing okay, but more than okay, but it's not what it could have been. Let's put it that way.
No, it's not what it could have been. We bought a deal around the corner, no retrade, not even, we didn't even ask for it for the most part. Inevitably, it's a fantastic deal. I just think that they're taking advantage of the situation. But, like you said, cash is king. We're blowing away our expectations. It could be worse. So, But in the end, a win, we're taking a run. We're putting a run on the board. Another one that goes into the track record. It's another successful project in Jacksonville. So, I'm really excited about that. So net, I'm happy. I'm getting a deal done. At the same time, there's that little added insult of having to give in. But, you win some, you lose some. And this was a net win on a minor. We won the war. We lost the battle.
Yep. There you go. But awesome. We got a great guest on today. He's another one of the speakers for the event we're going to be doing this Sunday on the 19th. This episode will be out after that. I'm almost positive there's going to be some sort of recorded offering that you can go and watch, but the event is called the Long Island Real Estate Revolution. It was originally supposed to be an in-person event with 100% of proceeds going to Leukemia Lymphoma Society, or LLS, which is easier for me to say. And now we are going 100% virtual, 100% free. And if you have the capability to donate when you see something you like or you learn something, even better. If you want to go check it out, the website is lirealestaterevolution.com. And today's guest is one of the speakers, like I mentioned, and his name is Jordan, and we're very happy to have him on. I'm going to let him introduce himself because I'm sure he can do it better justice than I can. So that being said, Jordan, thanks for coming on.
Thank you for having me. My name is Jordan Cailliarec. My background is in distressed 1 to 4 family nonperforming loans, which is segued into tax liens and purchasing properties at auction. And I'm pleased to be on the show.
Awesome. So great 30-second overview. Can you give us a little bit more of a narrative of kind of what your background is, how you got into it? Like, what was your introduction? How did you find out about it? And how have you navigated into some more stuff going from there?
Sure. So I actually attended law school from 06 to 09. Okay. And obviously from 08 going into 09, the legal job market kind of crashed, for lack of a better way of saying it. My original intention was actually to be an IP litigator. While I was in law school, I was working for an attorney who bundled family and friends money and was doing hard money bridge loans for investors. At that point, the rates were much higher for hard money and private loans than they are now. That was back in the 16% prime rate, and then obviously default rate of 24. And I started to get very interested in purchasing NPLs from the HUD bulk loan sales. And I just became absolutely enthralled by the option of doing that. Researched it. This was 09 going to 10. Convinced the guy I was working for with some of the proceeds from his deal flow to try a few of them. Worked out well. And then obviously that segued into building a platform with an institutional investor where we were doing it throughout the tri-state area, kind of on a regional level. So scaled, but not scaled, for lack of a better way of saying it. That ran into probably around 14, 15. There were some large scale trades from players in the field much larger than us, who they were overpaying for them, specifically Lone Star funds, which is Caliber home loans, if anyone is kind of looking through that. And they did these non-rated NPL securitations called Volt NPL securitizations. And they were paying, in this particular space of resi NPLs, they generally always have negative equity. And then it's also notable, these are always first position loans. They generally have negative equity. So you're not buying at a percentage against the unpaid balance, you're buying at a percentage against the asset value. So the standard has always been like 62% or less, which obviously for an illiquid NPL, it's a little bit hard to calculate what a loan yield is, but that translates to a yield of around 15%, give or take. And Lone Star did a couple large scale trades where they were paying 72 to 76. And that kind of blew up the space for everyone else, around 15 or so. So from there, I kind of took my winnings. We scaled down the platform. Our institutional backer also had a number of headline risk issues, which kind of led them to be facing redemption requests. So obviously, we kind of were affected by that as well. And I used my relationships throughout the court system, throughout kind of all the foreclosure vendors, to segue into purchasing properties at auction. And I've kind of been a little bit less active than I was during the 2010 through 15 era, just kind of doing my own thing with partners, Long Island, Nassau, Suffolk, a number of deals in Brooklyn and Queens, some things in Westchester as well. But that's what I've been doing for the last 5 years. And obviously before that, I was involved on the institutional end with NPLs. And considering what's going on now, my intention is obviously to segue back into NPLs.
Awesome. So just to be clear, NPL stands for non-performing loan.
Non-performing loan, correct.
I want to make sure anybody listening keeps up with that. Obviously a ton of stuff to unpack there. And I want to make sure we get the 30,000 foot view and understand everything that's going on. So if I understood correctly, during this time in 2008, 9, and 10, a lot of the private money and lenders were significantly higher loans. You were saying 15 and 16%. Was that the interest rate that was given upon the origination of the loan, or is that the percent return you would get when you were acquiring lower valued NPLs?
No, actually, just to back up one second, that
Sure.
Two things. One, the private money I was referring to was originally the source of the first kind of round, the family and friends deal, which was obviously the track record which we sourced institutional money from. Mm-hmm. But the loans we were purchasing were not private defaults. These were institutionally originated first positions on home loans, and these were largely subprimes from that era, which now they call it non-QM, and HUD defaults. But we were never actually buying direct from HUD or direct from the source. We were generally paying a couple point premium, but we were sourcing and cherry picking small tapes regionally from the middle market funds, which were buying direct from the large players who bought from HUD. So you would have trades involving entities such as Lone Star, who were buying a few $1 billion at a time, which obviously we were nowhere near. Then there were middle market players who kind of, their game was to do workouts on these loans, try and create reperformers out of them, and then they would resecuritize those loans. And then the loans that they were unable to work out, they would offer us 1, 2, 3, up to maybe 12 to 15 in the regional level, and that's what we were purchasing. But we were not purchasing investor bridge loans. We were actually purchasing residential loans.
Gotcha. So again, if I'm understanding, somebody went in and purchased these non-performing loans in massive quantities. And then what would happen is the few or handful of them that they couldn't get into some sort of performing way, they would then look to then offload to you, and you would come and pick up, like you said, between 5 and 15 and try to do it better than they could for whatever reason because they bought it originally. Am I understanding it correctly?
In a bit of a nutshell, the very large players, aside from Lone Star, which is kind of an entity in and of itself, the very large players would generally just look to purchase it and hold it for several days because they already had the 1,500, 2,000 loan package sliced up 3 or 4 ways, and they already had buyers. So they were really just providing transactional liquidity.
Sure. Okay.
Then subsequent to that, the people who were actually doing the workout, entities such as Condor, such as BSI, such as Carrington, which is obviously affiliated with Spurs, middle market entities were the entities we ultimately purchased from. But notable is that the fact that we were not looking to create reperformers out of these whole loans. We were looking to actually take them the whole way. We were the end of the chain.
So when you say the end of the chain and take them the full way, that's you were looking to foreclose and take over the asset?
Foreclose and take over the asset, or work with the borrower and on a more kind of granular level than people would on scale. For example, when you're dealing with these middle market groups, what they would primarily do, they're first of all, and they were also required to have loan servicers. We weren't, for various regulatory reasons, which we can get into perhaps later. But their debt collection efforts were limited to phone calls, to letters, which obviously somebody's been in default for several years. They're not particularly scared by another letter in the mail.
Of course.
We were a lot more hands-on and door knocking as actual principals in the entity, and either foreclosing, which obviously through our relationships in the court system, through the clerks, who actually hands-on knowledge of the specifics on a local level, we were able to be a lot more efficient at it. Or in terms of working things out, we would actually often get the borrowers to agree to list the property with a favorable local broker. Agree for cash for keys if they, not cash for keys, but I suppose it is, if they were agree to simply move on assistant transactions, so we never actually take the asset and we could simply get paid off, and that would be a short sale. But the other thing is also that a lot of these larger groups were restricted, and I still don't understand why, because it doesn't make sense to me, by the arm's length affidavit requirement in a short sale, which basically says that it can't be sold to a family member. It can't be sold if there's any non-arm's length relationship between the ultimate buyer. And yet so many of these situations from the 01 to 07 originations where you had people who was a husband and a wife, and one of them used their credit on a stated income loan, so their credit was wrecked, but the other party had income and good credit at that point. But ultimately you couldn't do a short sale from a larger entity from the husband to the wife or the wife to the husband in that sort of scenario. And obviously you can expand that, but you get the concept, because of that arm's length restriction, which obviously we didn't care about. And obviously we would generally speaking not issue 1099-Cs. We were able to operate a lot more flexible and be a lot more creative in the way we were able to exit these if the person was amicable than people were on scale. And also we could be a lot more responsive, when things arose that were kind of bumps in the road.
No, I hear you. I think it makes a lot of sense. It's basically, if I'm understanding correctly, again, these larger firms would come in and purchase in bulk, and they were probably writing off a certain percentage in their acquisition strategy anyway. You guys were able to come in and pick those loans that were written off and get creative and make things happen at a different level, a more intimate level, to kind of create those ultimately positive outcomes for you, your investors, and everything else.
Right. And we also underwrote them a lot more intricately. For example, the judges are humans. People always want to think that the court system is supposed to operate as this black and white. It's not. It's in the gray. Certain judges have certain sensitivities, certain tendencies in the way they look at things. And obviously when we were underwriting this, people wouldn't do this on scale, because simply if you're at a trading desk in California, you don't know these details. We would automatically strike out certain loans that had a judge that we knew would be a problem, or took a very, very long time to render decisions, which would blow the cycle times on our model. Or, we would also run out foreclosure searches, because we're actually looking at it from the legal aspect as well. What a foreclosure search is, it's a title search, but it determines necessary judgment creditors that have to be named defendants to extinguish any clouds on title if you ultimately have to bring the property to a foreclosure auction. So, for example, if we saw that they missed, that when we looked at the existing foreclosure lawsuit versus our foreclosure search, and we saw that they missed a judgment creditor or two, we could either say, okay, we'll take this particular loan as part of the portfolio, but we want a discount, or we won't take it. And the reason for that is what you would do in that scenario is what's called a strict foreclosure, which is a secondary ancillary lawsuit to extinguish the misjudgment creditor. They either have the option to pay off the loan, which obviously it's underwater, so God bless them if they wanted to do that, or then they would be extinguished from claiming any interest in the property, and we'd be able to resell it with title insurance. So we were looking, that's one of the things that created a lot of problems for people who are doing this on scale, is that inherently these residential NPL pools have a ton of tail risk built into the pools. And what that means for somebody who may not be familiar is that kind of the initial first really good deals that work out great drive your returns, and then it's the things at the back end of the pool that really, the sticking ones to enable you to close out a pool, that kind of will blow your model up and your projected returns.
That's like, so when Chris and I first started working together, I have a buddy who's a lawyer who, not unsimilar, that, when we were talking, he was doing a lot of this type of stuff. And he used to say, hey, you guys find the deals, then he can go into the county records. And he still does it to this day, where he's like, okay, no, this one's got way too much on the foreclosure. And he could look at, on these big pools and look at little intricate things to say, this, it's not going to work. This one's going to be whatever. So it was a unique advantage that you brought to the table where, like you said, a group in California that's looking at deals over here, they're not going to know these little things, where you guys can look at that and really get granular, say, okay, this one we can work on and we can execute it quickly. Whereas it's going to take them forever to figure it out, or they're not going to, which is, a competitive advantage that, I don't want to say the little guy, but you guys have that advantage where the bigger groups didn't.
That's pretty much exactly what it is. We were able to look at these details, and obviously we never really, our focus was always downstate New York. We did a number in various pools just because it just happened to work out that way in Northern Jersey and Connecticut, but we never really expanded beyond the jump in the car and be able to look at the thing within 2 hours sort of radius.
Mm-hmm.
Interesting. Awesome. So you did a very good job of explaining that and understanding the process. So take us through a little bit. Obviously came to an end and you shifted into the auction side of things, and John has some background in this as well. What attracted you to it? What was it? What was the catalyst that made you kind of decide to shift gears and pivot? And, how were you able to, I don't know if it was seamlessly or not seamlessly, but transition from one to the other?
I'd like to say it's more seamless than it was, but it was a situation where I kind of understood the writing was on the wall as far as both our institutional backer, who was at that point a very, very large. I think at that point they were top 5 by AUM. And I'm sure, obviously, if somebody really wants to dig in, they can figure out who it was. But they had massive headline risk issues, and they were the first fund to ever be criminally indicted by the DOJ for issues obviously entirely unrelated to this. So it was, for lack of a better way of saying it, a mess. They were facing massive redemption requests, and obviously they were looking to figure out what they could. And these are illiquid. So, when they started dragging me into meetings to proctologize additional acquisitions and start looking at things that for the past 3 to 4 years they had never looked at and had never in practice turned out to become a problem. I saw the writing on the wall, and obviously determined I need to be able to stay active, using my relationships and my knowledge in this space subsequently. So I had, for people who are not familiar with the auction process, there's multiple layers of vendors involved. There's title companies that specialize in auctions, also generally have vendors who kind of do the auction publication, who do the processing, who have the auctioneer in-house. It's kind of a network-based thing. And then obviously all the court referees of people who I had, or many of them had relationships with previously as the plaintiff in these suits. And now I was kind of incestuously jumping to the other side of the equation. So that was kind of, it was easier than it would have been from jump, but obviously nothing when you're starting something that's a little bit different from either previous is seamless, so to speak.
Sure. No, interesting. And what was it, was it just that it was like the opposite side of the same coin, which is why that was
exactly.
something
That's pretty much the best way to say it, I suppose. Yeah.
Okay. And obviously with the institutional partner, let's say on the outs, right? Probably not working together. How did you start looking at these properties? Was it you had built up some personal capital, you were just going to do it yourself? Did you have some other people that were interested? How did that
Everything I've done with auctions has had other partners on it. I had some winnings that were taken out of the institutional deals. So I had partners on them, winnings from that. And then obviously we were generally using hard money on all of these deals as well. If we weren't able to do an assignment of bid by marketing the property and reselling our auction contract, we would generally close it with hard money.
Gotcha. No, that's really interesting. John, did you ever look at doing auction stuff on Long Island, or did you? Because I know you did the taxi.
So I did, and it was just, I don't want to say the competition was crazy. It was like 2012 to 2015. I meant 2012 really. The pricing, I knew I couldn't buy the property myself. So I bought a ton of auction, probably about 150 properties in Pennsylvania, in Philadelphia in particular. Where I was able to go to the auction and buy tax delinquent stuff for $300, $400. I knew something here would be more expensive than I could afford. Also, my dad was an attorney, or still is an attorney. And, he, in a secured lending space, he said, you have so many institutional people fighting for the 5 boroughs, you're probably never going to buy something. So not that it wasn't possible, but I also didn't want to involve a mass amount of investors when I started doing it. So I just went to a place that I knew I could afford. If I fucked it up, it wasn't the end of the world if I lost 300, $400.
Yeah, we also always avoided the boroughs just because, for the exact reason you stated. And this is kind of something I've spoke about with Charlie a number of times and a whole bunch of other people, is that, Nassau has always been okay for me. I grew up in Nassau. My office is still down the road from the Court of Mineola. I know everyone in the courts over there. I'm always a friendly face. They all never had a bad experience with me. But Nassau, all the auctions are one day a week, one time, everything there. You don't even have to really look through the list. You can kind of look on Property Shark or whatever on the fly as you're sitting there. They have Wi-Fi in the courtroom.
Mm-hmm.
What I've seen, it was even better up until about a year and a half, 2 years ago, but you often see physicians, it's 3 or 4 of them come across in scrubs who want to try their hand at flipping a house. We like Suffolk very much because Suffolk, it's 8 different town halls. The plaintiffs can schedule them randomly at various times throughout the day at their choice.
Mm-hmm.
And I have relationships where I'm able to get the upside prices in advance. So I know which properties are worth looking at in advance. I know which auctions are worth attending, and I know which ones not to waste my time driving or sending somebody to go over there to attend it, because I already know what for people who don't know, the upside price is the reserve in a foreclosure auction.
So that was the other reason why it's extreme. To be really efficient, the relationships are utterly important.
It's a very insular, closed-off space, and if you don't have those relationships, I mean, it's very, very hard to be competitive.
Yeah, and that was the biggest reason I said, I'm not, why try if I can go to this auction and, for $300 I can buy a property.
Right.
Additionally, my buddy now, who's an attorney, he'll text me, hey, we're bringing this property to auction, this is the price. And, he does it all the time. And I look at it, I'm like, yeah, probably not worth it for me or whatever. So, even my one friend, my college roommate was, that relationship alone, I see deals here and there that, sometimes I'm like, maybe it would be interesting, but inevitably the relationships in this area and the city, don't even touch it. It always deterred me. It was just, and I'd love to be involved, but you end up spending so much, you're spinning your tires when, a guy like, someone like Jordan would get it way before I would even, have a shot.
Right. And obviously I still have a number of NPLs at this point. They're primarily personal investments, and these are not institutionally originated home loans. These are defaulted hard money loans from relationships. Like I have one hard money lender who's since retired to Florida, who basically did very well by him over the years, both borrowing on deals and also kind of originating deals from him he actually funded some of the exits from my institutional NPL space. He had a relationship with the attorney I started with. And a couple of years back, he had like 3 or 4 things left in his portfolio. 1 or 2 of them I didn't like. He basically said, Jordan, listen, I'm retiring to Florida. I don't need to do any of this. I've had enough aggravation in my life. I just want to be out. Just look at these, take them if you want. I don't need to really make a killing. I'll sell them to you for lends of principal. I just need to be out. So one of those was a mixed use in Queens, and another was a large, it's really is kind of semi-improved lot in East New York. So those are things I'm sitting on as well. And obviously, since then, I've also acquired, as they've come up, defaulted hard money loans and turn them around. But it's the same situation where when I get one and I know what's going on, I'll text all my buddies, say, hey, this one is coming up. Here's what the upside is going to be. If we wind up taking it back, for whatever reason we need to show a higher upset, I'll do an assignment of bid to you if you like it. And this way it's exclusive to you. You don't have to do the hand raising, jumping around like a maniac. I'll sell it exclusively to you on an assignment of bid basis. If I set a high upset and take it back, just let me know what you think about it. And we've actually turned around a number of the deals in that manner as well.
Yeah, I think one thing I took from what you were saying, just talking about the system of Nassau and Suffolk, I think can relate to a lot of people of, just any deal you're looking at, the easier the less time you spend, the easier it is to find that deal it just becomes more of a margin game. How much are you willing to make on that, and who's willing to make the least? Because if you put in no effort and a deal falls in your lap, you're not the only one that's seeing it. It's who's willing to pay the most for it. And that's where it comes back to, we talk all the time about, competitive advantage and broker deals on the multifamily side, where the conversation we're consistently having is, why should we buy this property? And it shouldn't be, and the answer should not be just because we're willing to pay the most. That's a really bad answer, because we're not, especially when we're competing against institutional players on this side, their expectations are significantly lower, and they're going to also operate these things probably, marginally cheaper than us, which for them makes all the difference in the world. So I think it was a really great, perspective, and another example of how, the easier it is, the more people are going to do it. The tougher it is to find the deal, the tougher it is to find the opportunity, the greater chance it is that it has, more value to it and more upside to it. So it makes a ton of sense. And it also goes back to too, because we do out of state, and we're not consistently, but we examine different markets, and sometimes we'll be entering a market for the first time. We're always asking the question of, how many people have seen this deal before us? Because we know we get deals in markets we're in for a while now. We get deals sent to us, that go to market a year later, and we've already looked at it and said no, and then it comes out even higher, and we were way off, and we see somebody buy it, and it
always happens.
and it's the same conversation over and over again. It's like, the brand new person that decides to get into commercial real estate or something like that, and they buy one of the first deals they see on LoopNet, it almost guaranteed you overpaid for it.
It's been so easy, and money's so cheap the last couple of years. It lends itself to inexperienced players. And one of the things I saw you put up as well, which is obviously very relevant, is people not building CapEx into models, and that's something that it's like people do, Andy Beal, who many people may not know who he is. He's a strange guy, but he runs Beal Bank in Texas, which actually is not a retail bank, but he's used deposits to kind of fund NPL and distressed investments. He's always said people always do all the dumb deals. I don't know why people do the smart deals. And it's like what you put up the other day is people are spending money on the amenities, on a new pool, on the gym. They're not fixing the roof. They're not looking at the AC condensers. They're not looking at the guts of what actually, if everything comes crashing down, what makes the asset.
Yeah, no, I think
something that we've been talking about for a while. There's so many people chasing things, and there's a book every day being published, and things popping up, and people are looking for the easy way out. And for the last blank years, right, fill in the blank, 2012, 2013 to today, or till 4 weeks ago, you really couldn't make a mistake. And even if you made a mistake, you really didn't get hurt. But now, like you said, you fix your ACs and your roofs and your stuff like that. It doesn't look pretty. It's not sexy. I joke around people, I don't like, there's nothing about our properties when you bring someone by, they're like, wow, this is fucking gorgeous. They don't do that. You drive by our properties, they're like, people live here? I'm like, this is actually a really nice, clean place to live.
This is better than most of them.
but this is not a sexy Class A 5-story elevator building in Bushwick or Williamsburg. I said, that's not – those deals are great. But if I bought that deal today, if you're willing to give me money at 3%, yeah, let's go buy it. I said, but I can't. It doesn't make sense. We're going to fix this. We're going to hold it. We're going to cash flow. It's going to do really well. But those are the little things that people don't realize. And, on your side of the coin, when you guys take over a non-performing loan, there's some holding costs, it doesn't happen automatically. And that's been my biggest, and even Chris, when we were talking with, my buddy, the biggest problem for me was, I need something coming out of this quicker. And that's always been the deterring part. And I know there's all these loan mods and things you can do, but can you talk to that part?
We didn't generally participate in that. So the thing is also, we obviously because we were vetted, and obviously considering our track record and who was backing us, we were able to access the entire underlying collateral file of all these loans on a loan level basis before we got involved. And then we saw which ones had loan mods previously, what the person's income was, all of that stuff. So obviously that's something we generally consider. And for the most part, we never offered loan modifications or anything of that nature, nor were we obligated to do so. At that time, there was something called the small servicer exemption, which basically under 5,000, if you serviced under 5,000 loans, and we never even had a licensed loan servicer because we always held our GP entity, always held entity in the debt. So there was no legal requirement for us to do so. But in any event, we were covered under the federal small servicer exemption. So we didn't have to participate in any of those HAMP programs, any of that stuff. But realistically, it's not even an issue of being, the bad guy or anything, because if you look at that stuff, it's bullshit anyway. All those things are redefaulting now anyway, and for the most part, like at least half, if not more, what comes up to auction is defaults that occurred prior to, 2010. And when HAMP first came into being, there was like 2 tiers of HAMP, and I don't remember all the details on, with great specificity because it's a decade later. But the first tier, basically, if somebody applied for a loan modification, if they made one payment, the loan was reinstated and was considered a reperforming loan when it first started. And then it obviously kind of evolved to 6 months to 8 months, depending on the product, 10 months, whatever it is. And then after you show a trial, it became a trial period is what they called it. After you completed the trial period and said, okay, you actually have an intention of paying, you're not just looking to take it out of foreclosure. But remember, in a lot of these loans, from the time you defaulted, it took 2 to 3 years for them to even start the foreclosure in the first place. And the freaking foreclosure lawsuit took another 3 years. So you're dealing with situations where the average median time, from what I was looking at, they always said it was 36 months, like CoreLogic, those data services said it was average 36 months from default to auction in New York State. I think that's bullshit. I think it was a lot longer than that, because most of what I was looking at was 6 years, 7 years. So if you're thinking about it in that context, you had all these people who literally would make one payment under the loan modification. But notably, it also took the note holder 3 years to get to that point. They'd make one payment under the loan modification. The property would be taken out of foreclosure, and you'd start that time again. It'd be another 4 years before the foreclosure was started again. And where does that go? It's just recycling the same toxic trash again and again and again. And even now, I have the information which I can pull up, but it's probably not massively pertinent. But there was just, I think it was, it's bothering me. There's currently, or there was until COVID hit, and it was in March, a $500 million reperforming loan securitization that was just put up. And the majority of them, like 90% of them, were 01 to 07 originations.
Wow.
And they just and this is the trash that's being sold to institutional, fixed income managers. And literally, what people don't know, when they're offering a $500 million reperforming loan securitization of 01 to 07 originations, what that means is that's the worst of the worst subprime loans who have already been in default at least once through some crackpot scheme to reamortize the loan under some crazy DTI ratio, some nonsense that was put in place under HAMP. They're able to consider it a reperforming loan, and now they're offloading all of that risk to university endowments, to pension funds, et cetera, which is the whole reason they're re-securitizing it, is because no one else is going to bear the risk. And then they're selling it to fixed income managers, and ultimately the people who bear the risk are the people who always bear the risk, which, when it all comes down, is the working people, the middle, it's not the wealthy who bear the risk on these things when push comes to shove. It's the same people who are getting fucked by the foreclosure, who got fucked by the bad subprime in the first place.
Mm-hmm. And that's the crazy part, is just like, because my buddy is an attorney, and this is pretty relevant, and that's why I keep bringing him up. I know that he at first started working on one side of the coin. Then his firm got bought out by a real estate investor, and then he became on the other side of the coin. So he would get excited looking at documents. He's like, oh, wow, this is a fucking 7-year process. I could fight this foreclosure for, 8 years, give this guy money, get him out of the house, put a tenant in there, rent out the house. And, I'm going to kick this foreclosure down the road until the bank just says, fuck this, because, they don't want to do
like
it.
Step in. But one of the other things that's funny, actually, one of the other products they come along in limited doses. I think in like Florida, for example, it comes up a lot more than it does in New York. But we bought home HOA foreclosures in New York.
It's funny. So I offered on a house. We have a house upstate, and I offered on another one, and it was in an association, and it was foreclosed, and they haven't paid the HOA in forever. So I asked my buddy, I'm like, yo, you got to help me out with this. Long story short, I couldn't do it. But the other day, you know, maybe a couple of years ago, he's like, yo, my boss just bought this HOA foreclosure. You have no idea. He's like, that's what we should be focusing on. It's a fucking disaster.
Yeah.
And you can basically
so
take your
also
house.
under the New York State Condo Act, an HOA, and just so people understand, even if it's in like a gated community in Westchester or Long Island or whatever it is, technically anything that is an association, unless co-op, which is a whole different thing because that's non-judicial, it's not really relevant, is bound by, it's under the Condominium Act. You know, it's an offering plan, the whole process. So it's technically a condo for purposes of this. When you have an HOA foreclosure, the notable thing is by law, it subordinates all other debt except the first mortgage. So any tax liens, any second mortgage, any other credit card bills they didn't pay, any other people they screwed, any personal injury judgments against them, all that gets pushed. And the only thing you're subordinate to is the first mortgage. Now, if the first mortgage hasn't even started the foreclosure yet, you're golden, because then you're going to be a named defendant in the notice of pendency, and you'll be able to drag that thing out till kingdom come. And even if the foreclosure on the first mortgage has not started yet, generally what we do is, and obviously I have a legal background and I have a lot of attorney buddies, and sometimes they don't really even understand that. They just say, hey, give me a small amount of money, you can use my name and just do your work, and I'll look at it. I don't even really need to look at it half the time. I'll just sign it. I know you very well. And generally, even if you're post LP, you know, unless they already have a judgment of foreclosure and it's the 11th hour, you can move to intervene. You can always find some crap about something, some reason to intervene, some potential defense, something wrong with it, because all this shit was so screwed up back in the day that there's usually something if you want to nitpick it enough. So we're actually doing it. I have one, actually, it's not something, it's my deal, but it's a buddy's deal on North Shore, Long Island, where what happened was he bought it after the LP had already been filed. But what happened is, generally speaking, notice of pendency is for 1 year, an LP, as it's referred to, LP. In a foreclosure, it's 3 years. What happened here was that he bought the property at HOA auction after about, I guess, 38, 39 months or whatever it was. Bought it at HOA auction, recorded his deed to the property. And then immediately thereafter, but the LP had expired from the first. Immediately thereafter, the bank went in and they're like, oh shit, listen, okay, let's get this action going again. They basically forgot about the mortgage foreclosure. They filed a new LP, but when you file an LP, you can file it, you can either just refile it, or you can refile it. If you miss something in the gap, you can refile it and request what's called nonperforming relief, which basically means retroactive. So if there's a gap, you would then say, hey, we missed this. There's a 2-month period where there's no notice of pendency in the property. We want a court order that says, in addition to giving us the next step to move the foreclosure along, we want coverage for that gap period. And then obviously you have to run a separate title search for that. Any people who came up in that gap period, you have to give them notice and an opportunity to object. My buddy bought it under an LLC. They didn't do that for him. So they brought it to the final stage. They struck the property down at auction. And they realized, oh shit, we have this cloud on title. And the thing is, it's not a strict foreclosure scenario, because the law says that the only necessary party in a foreclosure lawsuit is the record owner. He was the record owner during that gap period because he bought it from an HOA foreclosure and recorded the deed to his LLC. So there's nothing they can do, and he's collecting $6,500 a month of rent for this thing.
Yep, that's my friend got.
And he paid like 60 grand for it in 2013.
It's crazy. My when my friend did it, he was like, "Yo, I got to teach you this. You could literally, if you find these things, it's your goal." He said it's literally the best thing in the world right now. If you could find them, you got to come across them. But you know, it's an amazing niche, and I'm glad you brought it up, because when he talks about it, you know, my eyes glaze over. I'm like, yo, this is way too complicated. But now I'm hearing it for like second and third time. Like, I actually know what's going on now.
And on the funny flip side, I actually live downtown, but I split a lot, obviously, for work. You know, I come out to that because most of my core business is on the island. So I go back and forth a lot. And, you know, we have properties that kind of are just sitting vacant. So we have, you know, furnish it to a limited basis, stay there for a couple of days, work during the week, and then obviously go back and live it up on the weekend. But you know, I have a buddy who actually works for a large scale property manager in the city. And we had one deal that was funny, because a friend of mine purchased the property at mortgage foreclosure auction. This was on John Street in Lower Manhattan. Big number. Obviously, it was a 2-bedroom, 2-bath property with 2.5-bath property, whatever it was. And I remember telling my buddy the entire time, because he was like, did you want to try and do this one's a mortgage for 2 years before the auction? I knew about the property, or about the unit, I suppose. And I kept telling my buddy, I'm like, tell your board, I don't know what they're doing. The mortgage foreclosure is going to take forever. The board just seems to have filed common charge liens. They don't appear to be prosecuting a foreclosure. So we went and he talked to the board manager. Obviously, he was a property manager for the condo, whatever. The president of the condo board was like some big white shoe real estate attorney, I'm sure commercial deals. He said, oh, you don't know. He's like, we have a judgment, we're covered or whatever. I'm like, no, you're not. No, you're not. But you know what? Not my problem. At the end of it, they tried to stick my buddy and they wound up getting fucked. They lost $300,000 plus in common charge liens because they didn't foreclose. So that's the thing is as a condominium board, you have to foreclose in your lien. You can't just file the lien and then you jump into the capital stack and, that's not the way it works. So it goes both ways on it, but it's funny how nuanced so many aspects of this foreclosure process are. And obviously, I guess I'm talking about it from a very legal standpoint, but that's kind of my big value in a lot of these deals is the nitty gritty legal aspect of it, because New York is a judicial state.
Yep, that's and my buddy talks about that all the time. There's so many little nuances in this space that we're stupid over here, right? Like give me a rent roll, give me a cap rate, and I'm going to tell you what the building's worth. But that space, with that legal background, and that's why he's so excited about deals sometimes. And I'm like,
yeah, I get very amped up and feel like, no, down to it.
Yeah, it's
you don't get it.
It's crazy. That's why I said you're so much more sophisticated. He's like, no, but you have like 4,500 apartments. I'm like, dude, it's so easy. Anyone can do what I do. Knowing what you do.
I mean, you guys are obviously very talented and conservative and do it properly, which is the difference for most people. Like one of the other things, actually, that I'm going to keep talking about it and feel comfortable. So there's also another provision which we actually started doing several years back. So when these properties get struck down at auction, especially in not great areas, particularly in like Suffolk and Sticks, and like I'm sure you guys are from Long Island as well, so you're obviously familiar, like Mastic, Shirley, Central Reach, those areas. When the property gets struck down at auction, banks generally don't really give a shit about it after, and they won't put a security door on it. They'll just leave it. It's okay. So you have all these properties that get, broken into, the copper stripped out or whatever. So there's something called the Uniform Purchaser Vendor Risk Assumption Act, which basically, and it's primarily designed to apply to retail contract of sale. So what it basically says that in the event that, unless the contract specifically shifts the risk to the purchaser, in the event that between contract and close, there's any damage to the property, the purchaser has two options. One, to either ask for obviously this is if they decide to litigate and nobody's willing to just settle it amicably. It's binding legal authority. Two options the purchaser can ask for. One, for the seller to restore the property to as is condition on the date of the contract, or two, to have a reasonable abatement of the purchase price that's consistent with the damage to the property that's occurred. And generally, this is going to be when you have a contentious contract on a retail deal or whatever, where people are fighting about it, and the purchaser will sue the seller for specific performance and request this ancillary relief. And then, obviously, generally speaking, all these parties will settle on that scenario. But what we found is, and we've done it very successfully on a number of occasions, is that when you have a situation like this in an auction where it's in a crappy area, the bank really doesn't give a shit about it because they figure, okay, the property sold at auction in 30 days, we're going to get our money, whatever it is. They'll just let it go. And we always started taking pictures, right? Because we generally don't do drive-bys like the week before. We'll generally do it the day of, because like I was saying before, when we get the upset prices, we'll get the upset price the morning of the auction at 6 a.m. or the night before 10 o'clock. So our drive-bys of our targeted properties are very, very targeted, and they occur immediately around the time of the auction. We'll always take detailed pictures. We'll go in through the window. Obviously, you know what we do. We'll take pictures of the interior. The doors are generally open on these. We have all the bank keys anyway. And then if there's any change in circumstance, if the bank tries to TOE us, we'll bring an order to show cause, request a TRO. Our TRO specifically says that we request the stay of any attempt by the plaintiff to declare a TOE and retain our down payment. We'll request the relief I explained, which is an abatement of the purchase price or a to repair the property to as is condition on day of the auction, which obviously they never do. We'll also request that during the period it's being litigated, that any carrying costs, inclusive of real estate taxes, because RE taxes on the island are much higher than they are in the city, be borne by the plaintiff. And judges don't even really have time pick up what the fuck it is they're signing, and they'll just sign off on our TRO. And when they do that, generally it's going to be 6 to 8 months before the judge even looks at it on their pile. And during that period, the bank starts getting really, really, really desperate. And they'll come to you and say, hey, will you reduce your bid price? Sure. And during the entire time, we have the property up on MLS as an assignment of bid and trying to market it. So if we have somebody that bites at our number, great, okay, we don't even need the abatement. We'll close, we'll withdraw our pending motion. If we don't get somebody, we'll keep working. And eventually, in the worst case scenarios, we have some of those that we've kept the ball in the air on that for 2-3 years. And at the end of all of it, the bank takes 20, 30, 40, 50 grand less. We don't even have to close on the property because we're wholesaling our bid. And everyone walks away miserable except for us.
I love that. That's a perfect place to I mean, what's better than that? I mean, that
half the time, it doesn't even need to be something substantive. Normally, you're the smiley face. You have some angry plaintiffs, because generally the bank attorneys don't even send somebody from their firm. They just send the local coverage counsel. It doesn't know anything about the case. They're seeing this for the first time. They have no vested interest in it, and they're angry about it, and they come in scowling, having to deal with this in the first place. We're smiling. We're jovial. We know exactly what we're getting. We know exactly how this is going to play out. Judge says, seems reasonable enough to me. What's the harm in TRO? The reason for a TRO is if the legal standard is if there's an immediate risk of harm. And the immediate risk of harm here is if they TOE us, we lose our down payment. So if you get a TRO, we're locked in for 6 to 8 months, and they can't do anything. And during the entire time, we can start marketing the property, and we don't even have to worry about the carrying cost of the RE taxes.
Yeah,
I know that's like my buddy gets excited too. So no, I think that's super insightful. I know, we could definitely, a part two, because I know we only talked about like non-performing notes and the nuances there. And I know, the tax, the distressed world is fucked up. There's so many ways to throw a wrench in the, in the chains. But that was super enlightening just for people to hear, there's another way to do it. And then
I'll give you another example, another great one. So on the NPL stuff, which is we couldn't do it on scale, and I frankly I didn't even know about it. I simply too inexperienced. I wasn't seasoned enough. But what I've started doing on a number of the personal NPL purchases we've done from hard money recently is when a borrower starts getting difficult and dragging it out, it really only applies to Nassau County. But the few times I've done it in Nassau County, it's good enough for me that it's worth talking about. Nassau County is pretty much the only county downstate aside from, there's like Westchester, Rockland did do it too, but Nassau County is a private taxing system where the people who are the taxing investors are private individuals or private holding companies, as opposed to Suffolk, where the county holds and auctions of properties, or property often takes them back. And in the city, all the taxes the taxpayers get securitized into the NYCTL trust, and Bank of New York Mellon does the bond offerings and ultimately services those packages. But in Nassau County, what we do when we've had an issue with this is we'll purchase the taxing by assignment when we're getting a lot of static on the mortgage foreclosure. And the reason, and we'll always wait up until a few days before the taxing foreclosure auction, which in theory would cut off our non-performing mortgage. And we lose all the money on it, but we have relationships with obviously all the big tax lien purchases. I'm a client of a large city firm who handles a lot of downstate New York tax lien volume. And generally a tax lien will cut off the mortgage, but we'll purchase it immediately before. So in the publication, it's still the prior tax lien holder. And then what we'll do on the terms of sale is basically like the auction contract, but it also provides for payment priority. We'll put in the terms of sale that are prior to any surplus being calculated or any other third parties getting paid. The very first person in line to get paid after the taxing holder gets paid is our mortgage. So basically, and then we'll set an upset. We'll say, okay, well, we can take this much of a discount premium on our mortgage, and then we'll set our upset at that number as a taxing holder. So basically, we circumvent the entire process, and by doing it that way, we can say, okay, well, now the taxing is this number. let's say our mortgage in theory we're owed $100, right? We paid $58. We're very comfortable if we get paid out at $75. We add that $75 onto whatever the taxing payoff is, and we set that at the upset as the upset price at our auction. And then basically we get paid first in line. And legally speaking, in theory, if there's any conflict between the judgment of foreclosure and sale and the ultimate terms of sale, the judgment of foreclosure and sale controls. But obviously, we're always looking to offload these properties to third parties as opposed to closing them ourselves. So if the referee has any issue and they say, oh, well, the judgment doesn't say that, well, we're not going to times the essence ourselves. That would be stupid. So we'll go back into court. We'll request non-protunct relief to resettle the judgment of foreclosure and sale to provide for that same payment order consistent with the terms at the date of the auction. And then we'll still get paid first in line.
It's a beautiful thing.
Yeah.
And obviously we have to purchase the tax lien and the mortgage under different entities, because otherwise you'd be dealing with the doctrine of merger and all that. But it's, if you're creative enough about it, there's always a way.
Yes.
That's for sure. Yeah. I think that's a great place to wrap up. I think we're definitely going to have to do a part 2 and understand some more in a few months. And maybe we'll see how some of these NPLs perform over the next few months and what kind of happens.
I think it's very early, but I think that it's coming.
Yeah,
it's coming.
For sure. I think if anybody's looking for one 30,000-foot view takeaway, it's know your competitive advantages and understand there are tons of riches and niches. So,
and focus on your core competencies as opposed to trying to reinvent the wheel, I think.
Absolutely. Beautiful. Jordan, thank you so much for coming on as a guest, explaining some of this stuff. I think I definitely picked up a ton of stuff that's going to help me understand a lot more just even about the debt world in general, let alone, the whole NPL space. If people want to pick your brain more, learn more about you, follow along with you, or just get in touch with you, where can they do that?
I guess you can put up my Instagram account when you tag this. I don't know. I'm kind of a private operator, so I don't really have much.
That's fine.
I don't want to give up my email.
We'll put it in the show notes. If anyone has any questions, they could shoot you a DM or anything like that.
Yeah, absolutely. If someone's substantive, I don't mind sharing. Obviously,
if somebody's listening on audio and they're going to go to their phone and look you up, what is it? So they don't have to go to show notes.
JRACNY.
Perfect. All right. Jordan, thank you so much for coming on. Guys, if you are not subscribed to the podcast, please do so. It helps us out a lot. And if you are subscribed, please send it to somebody you think would find it good to listen to. Jordan, thank you so much for coming on.
Thank you so much for having me on. I really appreciate it. And I definitely would like to do a part 2 at your convenience.
Awesome. Thank you.
Thanks, buddy.
All right. Take care now.